In the small dusty village of Umuohia, Addis lived under the heavy hand of her father, Boba Tond. Once a respected young farmer, he now spent his days drinking palm wine, his breath sour and his hands rough. Addis' mother had died long ago, and her stepmother, Momon Kem, ruled the compound with iron eyes and a sharp tongue. Addis was only 22, but her back already bent from years of fetching water from the stream, carrying firewood on her head, and sweeping every inch of red earth around their small mud house. The villagers watched in silence, their pity hidden behind quiet sighs. No one dared to challenge Boba Tond, whose voice thundered louder than the evening drums. Each night, Addis lay on a thin mat, listening to the crackle of the cooking fire as Momon Kem whispered about her in the dark. "She's a burden," she said. "One less mouth to feed would bring peace." Addis shut her eyes tightly, clutching her dreams of escape to her chest. In the early mornings, she rose before the rooster crowed, her hands cracked and rough, her heart whispering a silent prayer. She dreamed of freedom, of a life beyond the cracked mud walls of Umuohia. But in this world of red dust and harsh words, dreams were fragile as dried cassava leaves. Yet hope flickered like a stubborn lantern in the harmattan winds. And far beyond the dusty paths and rusted zinc roofs, destiny waited, unseen, but near. Chijioke came to Umuohia with nothing but determination. A young man from the city, he arrived with holes in his shoes and calluses on his palms. Boba Tond had promised him work on the farm, clearing cassava plots, lifting heavy baskets of yams, but day after day, he was paid in empty promises. Chijioke's quiet strength didn't go unnoticed. He spoke few words, but his eyes always searched the horizon, as if he could see beyond the red earth. Addis watched him from a distance, her heart catching every time he paused to drink from the clay pot or wipe sweat from his brow. One evening, Chijioke finally spoke up. "Boba Tond, I have worked for 3 months. Please, pay me what I'm owed," he said. Boba Tond scratched his graying beard, his eyes glinting with something Addis couldn't name. "You want money?" he asked, his voice soft but dangerous. "Take her," he said, pointing at Addis, who was sweeping the compound with quiet patience. Chijioke's brows furrowed. "Sir?" he asked. Boba Tond laughed, a bitter, empty sound. "She's yours now. Let her go with you to Lagos. That is your payment." Addis' broom slipped from her fingers. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Momon Kem crossed her arms, her eyes cold as the morning harmattan. "Good," she said. "One less burden to feed." Addis' heart pounded in her chest, a sound louder than the pounding of fufu in the mortar. She looked at Chijioke, his face was calm, but his eyes were sad. And in that moment, everything changed. With nothing but a small bundle of clothes and the weight of 100 lifetimes, Addis' journey had begun. The dawn was still cool when Addis left Umuohia behind. She didn't look back as she climbed into the battered bus with Chijioke. The bus coughed and rattled, the cracked windows streaked with red dust. She clutched a small nylon bag to her chest, everything she owned tucked inside. The journey was long and jarring. The bus lurched over potholes as they passed green fields and small towns where children waved from the roadside. Addis stared at the window, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. She had never left the village before. Lagos was a word spoken in stories, a place where dreams could bloom or die. Chijioke sat beside her, silent but steady. Every few minutes, he would glance at her, as if making sure she hadn't disappeared. His presence was a comfort, even though they barely spoke. When the bus stopped to let passengers buy roasted plantain and groundnuts, he bought her a small bag of warm akra. She smiled faintly for the first time in days. As the bus approached the city, the landscape shifted. Tall buildings rose like giants, and the roads buzzed with Danfo buses and Kiki Napeps weaving through traffic. Addis' heart beat faster, fear and excitement tangled in her chest. Finally, they arrived at a quiet street in Lekki. Chijioke led her down a small path lined with flowers and stopped before a tall black gate. He knocked, and the gate opened to reveal a white mansion surrounded by bright hibiscus and the gentle murmur of a fountain. Behind the mansion stood a modest boy's quarters, neat and warm. "This is home now," Chijioke said softly, his eyes kind. Addis looked around, her heart both heavy and light. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in her life, she felt a flicker of hope. The boys' quarters behind Madame Folek's mansion felt like a quiet haven. Small but clean, with white walls that didn't leak and a bed with soft sheets. Addis ran her fingers over the wooden table and the small gas cooker in the corner. It was simple, but to her, it felt like a palace. That first night in Lagos, Addis slept deeper than she had in years. No shouts or curses to wake her. No sharp words from Mama Ken. Just the soft buzz of city sounds beyond the compound walls and the steady breathing of Chijioke as he sat by the window, lost in thought. In the morning, the smell of fried eggs and spicy tomato stew woke her. Chijioke stood at the stove, humming an old Igbo hymn as he cooked. "Good morning, Addis," he said with a warm smile. She returned it shyly. "Morning, Chijioke." He set a plate before her, the food hot and rich. She ate slowly, each bite filling a place in her that had been empty for so long. Later that day, he took her to meet Madame Folek. She was a regal woman in flowing lace, her voice soft but commanding. "So you're Addis," she said, her eyes warm. "Welcome, my dear. Feel at home." Addis curtsied, her heart racing. "Thank you, Ma." Back in the boys' quarters, Addis looked around and felt something she hadn't known for years: peace. She washed the plates carefully, swept the floor until it shone, and sang softly to herself as she walked. That night, as they sat together under the small bulb that lit the room, Addis whispered, "Chijioke, thank you." He looked at her, surprise in his gentle eyes. "For what?" "For this," she said simply, gesturing to the calm around them. "For not treating me like I was nothing." He reached over, his hand brushing hers. "You are not nothing, Addis. You are everything." Life in the boys' quarters was simple but sweet. Addis found herself smiling more, her laughter growing freer like the birds singing at dawn. She cooked new dishes every day, steaming pots of egusi soup, smoky jollof rice that filled the small room with the scent of pepper and promise. One afternoon, while Addis was stirring a pot of vegetable soup in Madame Folek's kitchen, the door swung open and Obinna strolled in. He was tall and smooth, wearing a white kaftan and a sly smile. "Oh, so you're the famous Addis," he said, leaning on the counter. "My mother told me you're as hardworking as you are beautiful." Addis kept her eyes on the bubbling pot. "Good afternoon, sir," she said quietly. Obinna chuckled. "Dropped it, sir. I'm Obinna. You should know that." His voice was low, his eyes lingering on her face. "You're different, Addis," he said softly. "You belong in a better world than this?" She stirred the pot faster, her heart pounding. "I'm fine here, sir," she replied. Obinna's smile widened. "Don't be shy. I could change your life, new clothes, a new phone, even a visa abroad. You're too pretty to waste your time on that security man." Addis' hand froze on the spoon. "I'm married to Chijioke," she said firmly. "I'm not interested." Obinna raised an eyebrow, his smooth voice turning hard. "Think about it, Addis. You'd be foolish to say no to me." She looked up, her eyes steady. "I have said no," she replied. "Please excuse me, sir." Obinna stared at her for a long moment, then laughed softly and left, his cologne lingering in the kitchen like a shadow. That evening, Addis told Chijioke everything. He listened, his jaw tight but his eyes full of quiet pride. "Thank you," he said, his hand warm on hers. "For standing by me." She smiled faintly. "You stood by me first." Addis tried to keep her focus on her work, but Obinna's words haunted her. She couldn't shake the way he looked at her, the silky promises he whispered. She prayed for strength, but her heart was heavy with unease. Finally, one morning after finishing her chores, she gathered her courage and walked straight to Madame Folek's mansion. Madame Folek was sitting in her plush living room, flipping through a magazine. Addis stood at the doorway, her hands shaking but her voice clear. "Ma, I need to speak to you." Madame Folek looked up, surprised. "What is it, Addis?" Addis took a deep breath. "Your son, he's been asking me to leave my husband. He says he'll give me money, send me abroad, anything I want." I told him no, Ma. But he doesn't stop. For a moment, the room was silent. Madam Folek set her magazine down, her eyes cool and calculating. Addis, she said softly, Obinna only sees your potential. Maybe you should consider it. Addis' heart pounded. No, Ma, she said firmly. I will never betray Chijioke. He gave me peace when no one else did. I'd rather leave this house than lose my dignity. Madam Folek's smile faltered. Be careful with your pride, Addis, she warned. But Addis bowed her head politely. Thank you, Ma. But I have made my choice. She walked back to the boys' quarters with her head held high, even as her legs trembled. That evening, she told Chijioke what had happened. His face grew dark, but his hand on her shoulder was steady. We don't need this place, Addis, he said quietly. If it means your peace, we'll leave tomorrow. Tears filled her eyes, but they were tears of relief. In that moment, she knew they would face the world together, no matter how small their start or how long the journey. The next morning, Addis woke early to the sound of footsteps outside. She opened the door and was shocked to see Madam Folek and Obinna standing there. Madam Folek's face was soft, her eyes kind. Addis, she said gently, we came to apologize. For everything. Obinna looked down, shame in his eyes. I was foolish, he said. I see that now. You're not just any woman, you're special. I'm sorry. Addis said nothing, her silence speaking for her. After they left, Chijioke sat her down. There's something I need to tell you, Addis, he began, his voice calm but heavy. She looked at him, her heart in her throat. Obinna is not just Madam Folek's son, he said. He's my brother. And Madam Folek, she's my mother. Addis' eyes widened in shock. Your mother, she whispered. Chijioke nodded slowly. I didn't want you to see me as another rich man's son. I needed to know you loved me for me, not for what I have. Tears welled in Addis' eyes. Chijioke, you hid this from me, she said softly. But I understand. She reached for his hand, her fingers trembling. I love you for your heart, not your wealth. He let out a long breath, relief flooding his face. Thank you, Addis. Thank you for loving me when I was nothing in your eyes. She smiled through her tears. You were never nothing, Chijioke. You were always everything. That evening, as the sun set over Lagos, they packed their few belongings. Chijioke rented a small flat in a quiet part of Suralere. It was nothing like the mansion, but it was theirs. In the tiny kitchen, Addis cooked their first meal together, a pot of spicy jollof rice, the aroma filling the air with promise. As they sat to eat, Chijioke took her hand. This is the start of our real story, he said, his eyes bright with hope. Addis nodded, her heart full. Together, she said. Always. Life in their small flat was simple, but it was theirs. Addis and Chijioke shared laughter, prayers, and quiet nights listening to the distant hum of Lagos. With the money Chijioke had saved, they opened a small buka by the roadside. Addis cooked meals that made customers smile, spicy ifo riro, sweet beans, and steaming pounded yam. Every day, they worked side by side, sweat and laughter mixing like palm oil in hot stew. Their love grew deeper in the glow of paraffin lamps and the soft sound of evening rain. Addis still dreamed of university, but she was patient. One step at a time, she told Chijioke. Our future is bright. One morning, as Addis swept the small shop, Chijioke called her outside. Come with me, he said, a secret in his smile. They drove to a quiet estate in Lekki, where white houses gleamed in the sun. He stopped in front of a large mansion with golden gates. Addis stared, her mouth open. What is this, Chijioke? She whispered. He pulled out a small set of keys. It's yours, Addis. Our new home. Her eyes filled with tears. Chijioke, this is too much. He smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. You're too much, Addis. You're my queen. As they walked through the gates, Addis turned to him, her face glowing. Chijioke, she said, her voice shaking with joy, I have something to tell you too. She paused, her hand resting on her belly. I'm 3 months pregnant. Chijioke gasped, then laughed, pulling her into his arms. God has truly blessed us, he said, his voice choked with emotion. I will love you and our child with everything I have. Addis smiled, resting her head against his chest. From the dusty roads of Umuahia to the golden gates of this house, God has been faithful, she said softly. My name is Addis. And truly, I was born for glory. As the sun set behind them, they held each other close, their hearts full of promise and faith. This was only the beginning of love, of family, of dreams finally coming true. Like, subscribe and follow for more videos.